Hey, hello. This is video number 6, and I will be discussing the 5-paragraph essay. This video will be tied to your first Commonplace book entry, which is called On and Learning, about the same topic. So you may not exactly know what a 5-paragraph is, but most of you, if not all of you, have written one before. High schools typically like to teach 5-paragraph essays. It's nothing against high school teachers. It's usually if they're teaching to a test. 5-paragraph essay, in its most basic form, includes 5 paragraphs typically. The first paragraph, you would have 3 things. So today I'm going to discuss apples, grapes, and oranges. Okay. In your second paragraph, you would discuss the first thing, apples. In your third paragraph, you discuss your second thing, which would be grapes. In your fourth paragraph, you would discuss oranges. And in your fifth paragraph, you would say, return to your first paragraph and basically just repeat what you said, which was about apples, grapes, and oranges. This is a very basic example of this formula. Basically, probably all of you have written one of these in your lifetime. Probably in recent years, they were more complicated than this, but they were still a list. In this class, I'm going to ask you not to write 5-paragraph essays. This is why I'm going to ask you to read the essay called On Learning, which is going to kind of start to help you grasp the idea of how we can get past that and break out of that 5-paragraph essay. One important note, which is often a measure of confusion among students at this point, is that a 5-paragraph essay isn't necessarily just 5 paragraphs. You can have a 10-paragraph 5-paragraph essay, a 20-paragraph 5-paragraph essay. The most important aspect of a 5-paragraph essay is that it's a list-like structure. So you have a list of different things, different items. It could be a list of the places you've lived in the past. It could be a list of problems to do with, drinking and driving. It could be, it's a list of ideas. So when we do, rhetorical analysis in the next essay, those are the most easiest to form a 5-paragraph essay. Here I am talking about media and news and audience. Congratulations, you just wrote a 5-paragraph essay. So how in the world do you break out of that 5-paragraph essay structure? Well, one way is to make connections. And this first essay, the narrative, is the first step towards that. So if you haven't already watched that narrative essay, video number 5, please do that. But thinking critically about this, so making connections. So in this example, what do apples and grapes and oranges have to do with each other? Well, you eat them. They're all for nutritious, yada, yada, yada. This is why this is a plus egg. The more complicated your observations are, the better you're going to do. The more complicated your connections are going to be. So in that narrative essay, the assignment sheet in the video, I asked you to kind of start from the beginning, okay? So make a list of observations of yourself. The more basic ones, it could also be complicated ones. So, for example, for me, I am from hometown, East Buffalo, Illinois. Education, BA in English, and MA in teaching and writing. Let's see. Other things about me. Favorite sports team. St. Louis Cardinals. Go Cardinals. Other things. Occupation. I have 2, actually. I am a part-time English instructor. And I also am a part-time driving instructor in Illinois. do that on the summers and on the weekends. That's my other occupation. So that's also something that might be interesting to me. I teach at 2 colleges, obviously Jefferson College and then Swick in Belleville, Illinois. Current town, Wood River, Illinois. It's just listing basic things about me, okay? You could do your favorite color, purple, anything you can think of on top of your head. Now, these will lead to more complicated questions. You know, you could ask yourself, what is an event in my life that stands out? For me, that'd be graduating college, graduating with my MA. Particularly because when I got out of with my bachelor's degree, I didn't think I was going to graduate. Okay, I didn't think I knew I was going to graduate. I didn't think I was ever going to graduate with an MA. I was done with school. I was tired of it. I didn't think I wanted to teach. It wasn't until a few years later that I figured out I wanted to teach. I went back to grad school and I never looked back. Okay, so graduating with a master's degree was something I never actually thought I would do, and when I did it, it was a really big achievement for me. Okay, it was huge. It was the best thing that ever happened. That achievement was amazing. So that road, I could write about that road to becoming an adjunct. Other things that are important to me right now, trying to get a full-time job. That could be really interesting. You know, over the summer I had an interview for a full-time instructor position with another institution. That didn't work out. But I had a face-to-face interview. The struggles of adjuncting. Okay, part-time, 80%, 75 to 80% of college teachers are adjunct. So most of your teachers are probably part-time, if not all of them. I don't know. And so doing the work, the jobs that you do. So these are just a few different basic things, and I first did them in a minute or two. Just a few minutes, I wrote these things down. I would have taken me a lot shorter amount of time had I not been talking about them as I've been doing them. So breaking down the 5 paragraphs, these are just some basic observations about me. So here, I would say, instead of saying, my hometown is Belleville, Illinois, here's a paragraph about Belleville in my experience growing up. My background in education is on English. Instead of writing a paragraph about English, I'd say, what does growing up in Belleville have to do with teaching or my education that I received? Now, there might not be anything, no connection. Some of your observations might not have anything to do with each other. You might really want to write about your hometown experience. Maybe you moved around a lot as a kid. Why is that interesting? Okay, so more than likely here, I would say, what does my education, and graduating and trying to get a full-time job, what do they have to do with each other? Why are they interesting? Okay, maybe my occupation currently might have something to do with that, but the other things might not be as important. Now, to you, you might also say, okay, well, moving from Belleville to Wood River, that was a huge part of my life. And now that was a huge part of my life, okay? That was a time where I was changing. Lots of things were changing in my life. My occupation, I switched jobs, I was moving. Totally important time in my life, okay? It was a huge shift. Lots of things changed in that time period. So that move could be really important. I had a student one time write a narrative about moving out of her parents' house into moving with her boyfriend, and then learning that, well, maybe she shouldn't have done that at 18. Okay, so that was an interesting experience. That was a time that was important for her. Again, you can write about anything. It just has to be purposeful. So this time instead of choosing, okay, I'm going to write a paragraph about graduating, I'm going to write a paragraph about moving, I'm going to write a paragraph about becoming a part-time instructor and a driving instructor, and I'm going to write a paragraph about getting a full-time job. That would be a 5-paragraph essay if I made a paragraph about each of these highlighted observations. Instead, asking myself, what's the connection here? Why does all these things matter to each other? They have a connection, maybe it's my love for teaching could have something to do with the educational climate in college today where it's so difficult. Why is that important to me? Why is that important to the things that have happened in my past? Now, as I was asking these questions, my childhood, growing up in Belleville, that could happen. Okay, I grew up in a primarily working class neighborhood. Went to a high school that had 5-6 people in my class. You know, that could have something to do with that if I look deeper. But that doesn't necessarily have to be where I go in this. All right. I could write a narrative about the struggles going through, primarily just the struggles going through grad school, why that mattered. Or I could write something currently. You could jump around in your life. Your chronology in your life could be, you could start as a child and move on to jump to today, or you could just stick with one time period. All right. You can go back and forth. Some narratives are really good with that. That's harder to do, but I've seen some really good ones that have done it well. So if I want to say, growing up in Belleville, now here I am today, the most important thing about that, if you choose to do that, asking yourself, why does it matter? Why is it important and significant? What is the link between those two? Okay, if you just go, here I grew up in Belleville, and now I'm a writing instructor, what's the point? What is for your reader, for your audience? Remember that last video. What is going to be important to your audience if you are doing that? What is the connection? If there is no connection, try and find something different. So this is what I mean by making connections, asking questions. Why are these things important to each other? Your list, your observations will be different than mine because you are not me, and that's okay. In this narrative, another reason I want to get to know you. Okay, this is going to be another way for me to get to know you on an individual level. Your writing style, and this is going to be the easiest essay in this class, but this is going to be a way to kind of start analyzing. And 5-paragraph essays, I will count down on them. I want purpose in this essay. Why are you writing this essay? Okay, and your answer should not be just that it was assigned. Why are you writing this essay? What do you want your reader to get out of this? Beyond, well, she's my teacher, she has to grade it. Okay. All of the essays in this class, we're going to be asking those same questions, and we're going to keep asking ourselves those questions to keep pushing ourselves forward. So here in this basic, you could fill in this 5-paragraph essay format. You could plug in anything. Okay. You could plug in biology and chemistry and meteorology. I guess it's a type of science, right? What are those things? And what is biology and chemistry and meteorology? What do they have to do with each other? Why are they important? Okay. What are you asking yourself? So asking these questions. Again, this 5-paragraph essay doesn't just have to be 5 paragraphs. If you're thinking, oh shoot, I gotta write a 6-paragraph, it's just sort of not a 5-paragraph essay. No. Is it a list? Most times the narrative is the easiest one not to write a 5-paragraph essay. It's the ongoing, it's the future essays, essay number 2 and essay number 3, ongoing in this class. So don't forget about this. I will continue talking about it. This is going to be a huge discussion. So when you're reading that on learning that for the first complex book entry, and you're like, I don't know what to write about. Have you written a 5-paragraph essay in the past? What were your experiences with it? Are you scared to move forward? Why do you think that high schools have taught it in the past? If it's been several years since you've been in high school, what are your experiences writing in general? Do you remember having written 5-paragraph essays before? So this video, primarily, the purpose of it was to describe what a 5-paragraph essay is, and some ideas for kind of starting that narrative and starting to break out of that. Should be really interesting to kind of hear your comments about it. What are your experiences writing? This is a writing class. We're going to do a lot of reading and writing. That's just English. I had a student last year actually comment on my teacher evaluation saying that we didn't do anything English. It was just reading and writing. Okay, it is reading and writing. This is what we're going to be doing in this class. And analysis, critical thinking. Grammar is important. I really care about that. I care about paragraph formation. But it's going to be really important for analysis. Number 1 priority. Okay. If you have any questions, again, please let me know on that FAQ discussion board post on Blackboard. Okay. Thank you.